She kept her balloon when every other woman popped theirs, but now the truth shatters her heart. Was his love real, or just a billionaire's cruel test? Can she forgive, or walk away forever? In a luxurious Lagos mansion, where dreams are made and broken every single day, lived a man named Chuka Okafor. At 34 years old, he had everything most men only wished for. His late father had built one of Nigeria's largest construction companies, Okafor Holdings, and when Chuka inherited it, he became one of the youngest billionaires in the country. His name carried weight in business meetings, government corridors, and elite social gatherings. Newspapers wrote about him, magazines begged for his interviews, and society ladies whispered his name like a prize to be won. But behind all the noise, behind the wealth, the mansions in Banana Island, and the fleet of luxury cars, Chuka was deeply unhappy. He would often sit alone on the balcony of his glass-walled mansion, staring at the Lagos lagoon as the sun went down, asking himself the same question: what is the point of all this, if I can't find someone who loves me for me? From the outside, he looked like the perfect bachelor. Handsome, tall, with a well-built frame and the calm confidence of a man in control. But inside, he carried scars. Scars not from business wars, but from failed relationships. Chuka had tried dating women from elite circles. At first, it was flattering, women throwing themselves at him, acting sweet, calling him pet names like "my king" and "my love." But after a few months, the truth always revealed itself. The endless questions about his cars, the obsession with Instagram posts showing off his wealth, the subtle but constant demands for shopping sprees in Dubai, or vacations in Paris. The worst heartbreak came 2 years earlier. He had been engaged to Adaora, a stunning lawyer from a wealthy family. He truly thought she was different. But one evening, just weeks before their wedding, he overheard a phone call she had with a friend. She laughed cruelly and said, "Honestly, I don't love him. But come on, he's a billionaire. Who would say no to that? I'll marry him, enjoy the lifestyle, and if it doesn't work out, I'll walk away with enough connections to last me forever." Those words pierced his heart like a knife. Chuka confronted her, and instead of denying it, Adaora shrugged. "Chuka, love doesn't pay bills. Don't be naive. You should be happy I even agreed to marry you." That night, Chuka ended the engagement. The tabloids had a field day, calling him cold, calling her a victim, but Chuka knew the truth. Since then, he had built walls around his heart. Still, deep down, he longed for love. A simple kind of love. The kind his parents once had before his mother passed. He remembered how his father used to hold his mother's hand during family dinners, how they laughed over the smallest jokes, how they built their empire together, not because of money, but because they genuinely respected and cherished each other. That was the kind of love he wanted. But in Lagos, finding such love felt impossible. His friends didn't help matters. At a private club in Victoria Island, his old university buddies would tease him. "Chuka, stop stressing yourself," said Obinna, sipping expensive champagne. "Just pick one fine girl, spoil her with money, and enjoy life. True love is for poor people." The others laughed, clinking glasses. But Chuka shook his head. "No, my brothers. I don't want a woman who sees me as a wallet. I want someone who sees me as a man. Just a man." They laughed harder, calling him a dreamer. Even his own staff noticed his loneliness. His driver, Musa, once said during a quiet ride, "Oga, you day live inside palace, but sometimes I day pity you. This your life too quiet. No madam, no children. Money no be everything." Chuka only sighed, staring out the tinted window. One Friday night, after another empty business dinner filled with fake smiles and forced laughter, Chuka returned home to his empty mansion. He walked past the grand chandeliers, the expensive art on the walls, the polished marble floors, and felt nothing. The silence was heavy. He poured himself a glass of wine, sat on the leather sofa, and switched on the TV. That was when he stumbled on a program that would change everything. It was a reality matchmaking show called Balloon of Love. The concept was simple: men walked onto the stage, and women held balloons to signal their interest. If they liked what they saw, they kept the balloon. If not, they popped it. The sound of popping balloons filled the studio as men and women laughed, flirted, and sometimes faced humiliation. Chuka watched with mild amusement. He saw flashy young men dressed in designer clothes, showing off watches and chains, yet still getting rejected. He saw shy men winning love simply because they spoke from the heart. He leaned forward, intrigued. Something about the show felt raw, unfiltered, and real. It wasn't like the high society dinners or carefully arranged matchmaking setups he was used to. Here, it was just people, ordinary people, trying to connect. As he watched, a wild idea took root in his mind. What if he went on that show? What if, just once, he stripped away the billions, the mansions, the bodyguards, and appeared simply as himself? Would any woman choose him then? The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. He wanted authenticity. And where else could he find it but in a place where no one knew his name, and no one suspected his wealth? The next morning, he made the decision. He called his personal assistant, Ngozi, and shocked her with his request. "Ngozi, sign me up for that show, Balloon of Love." She almost dropped the phone. "Sir, with all due respect, are you serious? That show is for regular people, not for men of your status." "That's exactly why I want to be there," Chuka replied firmly. "No one must know who I am. I'll go as an ordinary man." Ngozi tried to argue, warning him that it could be humiliating. But Chuka had already made up his mind. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of excitement, a sense of adventure. He went to his wardrobe that evening, bypassing the rows of Italian suits, designer shoes, and silk ties. Instead, he pulled out a plain faded shirt, one he hadn't worn since university, and a pair of old sneakers. Looking at himself in the mirror, he almost didn't recognize the reflection. He looked ordinary. Average. And that was exactly what he wanted. Chuka smiled faintly. If love can't find me like this, then maybe it was never meant to be. And so, the lonely billionaire prepared to walk into a world where no one would know his fortune, no one would care about his last name, and no one would judge him by his wealth. Only then, he believed, could he finally discover the answer to his lifelong question: will someone ever love me for me? The studio of Balloon of Love was alive that evening. Bright lights bathed the room in gold and white, music blasted through the speakers, and the audience clapped in excitement. The energy was electric, the kind of energy that made contestants nervous before stepping out. Backstage, Chuka stood quietly in his simple faded shirt and worn sneakers. Around him, other men paced nervously, some checking their reflection in the mirror, others adjusting flashy jackets and polishing gold chains. Chuka remained still, his hands in his pockets, watching silently. He knew he looked different. He looked ordinary, and that was the point. "Contestant number 7, please come to the stage," the stage manager called. That was his cue. Chuka took a deep breath and stepped forward. The studio erupted in cheers as he emerged, but the reaction was mixed. The 12 women on stage, each holding a bright balloon, scanned him from head to toe. He wasn't wearing designer clothes. He wasn't carrying flashy watches or jewelry. He didn't walk with the arrogance of a rich man. He looked like just another struggling Lagos man trying his luck. The host, a tall, charismatic man in a glittering suit, grinned at the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for contestant number 7. Now, ladies, is this your man, or not your man?" The rules were simple: keep the balloon if you were interested, pop it if you were not. For a moment, there was silence. The kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. The audience shifted uncomfortably, waiting for the first reaction. Chuka stood with a calm face, his heart beating fast beneath his chest. Then it happened. Pop! One balloon burst loudly. The sound echoed across the studio. The audience gasped. The woman who popped it, a tall model in a red gown, smirked and shook her head. She whispered to the lady beside her, loud enough for her microphone to catch, "Beg, he looks like he can't even afford my wig." The audience laughed cruelly. Chuka kept his composure, though inside, he felt a sting. Then another. Pop. A second balloon exploded, followed by giggles. This time it was a lady in a sparkling blue dress. She rolled her eyes dramatically and said, "Please, I came here for a man who can take care of me. This one looks like he came straight from Yaba Market." More laughter. The host tried to save the moment, smiling awkwardly. Oh, ladies, are we being too quick to judge?" But the popping continued. Pop. 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 3 more balloons went down almost at once. Some of the women didn't even look at him twice. They just bent their fingers and burst the balloons with sharp nails, dismissing him completely. The audience reacted with a mix of shock and amusement. Some clapped and cheered the ladies on. Others shook their heads in pity for the man standing quietly under the bright lights. Chuka's mind was racing. He thought back to his father's words when he was young. A man's worth is not in what he wears, but in what he carries inside. But standing on that stage, rejected publicly, it was hard to believe those words. By now, 8 balloons were gone. Only 4 remained. The host leaned toward the ladies, his voice playful. All right, ladies, remember, sometimes the best gifts come in simple packages. Who's keeping their balloon for contestant number 7? But his encouragement didn't help. The 9th balloon popped. Then the 10th. The lady who popped the 10th leaned into her microphone and said, "Honestly, he doesn't look serious. If you can't come on TV looking presentable, how will you handle marriage?" The audience roared with laughter. Chuka kept standing. His jaw tightened, but he refused to flinch. He refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing him broken. Now only 2 balloons remained. 2 women hesitated, glancing at each other, unsure. The cameras zoomed in on their faces. The crowd grew louder, urging them. Pop it. Pop it. Pop it. The pressure was immense. Finally, the 11th balloon popped. The sound was deafening. 1 balloon left. Just 1. The entire room focused on the last woman holding her balloon. She was petite, wearing a silver gown. She looked at Chuka for a long moment, chewing her lip nervously. The crowd chanted, "Do it! Do it!" Chuka held her gaze calmly. Inside, he prayed, "Just one person, one woman, let her see me." Her name was Amara, a 26-year-old schoolteacher from Enugu. She was not the loudest, nor the most glamorous among the contestants. While others wore designer gowns, Amara wore a simple silver dress her cousin had helped her buy from Balogun Market. Her makeup was minimal, her shoes weren't from a luxury brand, and unlike the others who saw the show as an opportunity to meet a rich man, Amara had joined reluctantly. Her friends had pushed her. "Amara, you are wasting your beauty in that classroom," one of them teased weeks earlier. "You spend your whole day teaching stubborn children ABC and mathematics. Try this show. Who knows? You might meet a wealthy man who will change your life." At first, Amara resisted. She valued hard work, honesty, and simple joys. But eventually, she agreed, half as a joke, half out of curiosity. She told herself, "If nothing comes of it, at least it will be a funny story to tell my students one day." Now here she was, holding her balloon tightly, watching the man in the faded shirt and sneakers standing in front of her. While the other ladies dismissed him, something about his calmness unsettled her. He didn't fidget. He didn't beg. He didn't look ashamed. He stood tall, as though rejection couldn't touch him. Amara felt something tug at her heart. This man is different. When the last balloon popped, she glanced at her own, still intact in her hands. The host had already announced, "All balloons are gone." The cameras prepared to shift. The audience was roaring. Then Amara stepped forward. Her heels clicked softly against the stage floor, cutting through the noise. She raised her balloon. The cameras quickly zoomed back. The audience fell into sudden silence, confused. The host blinked in surprise. Wait, wait. It looks like one balloon remains. He rushed towards her, microphone in hand. Madam, what is going on? Why didn't you pop your balloon like the others? Amara lifted her eyes to Chuka. For a moment, she ignored the cameras, the lights, the laughter. She spoke softly but firmly, I don't know why, but something tells me you're worth knowing. I'll keep my balloon. The crowd erupted in shock. Gasps, applause, even boos filled the studio. Some audience members cheered loudly, while others hissed, saying she was wasting her chance. The other women on stage exchanged sharp glances, whispering, she's just pretending. One scoffed, she'll regret it. Another hissed under her breath, she must be desperate. But Amara stood her ground, holding her balloon close to her chest, her eyes never leaving Chuka. For the first time that night, a genuine smile touched Chuka's lips. Not the smile of a billionaire hiding pain, but the smile of a man finally seen. The host, sensing drama, jumped on the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, what a twist. Contestant number 7 is not leaving empty-handed after all. We have one woman, one brave woman, who has chosen to keep her balloon. Give it up for Amara. The crowd clapped, some reluctantly, some with excitement. Cameras zoomed in on Amara's calm but determined face. Social media comments flooded in instantly. On Twitter, people typed furiously, who is this girl? She's only acting, she must have a game plan. Respect to her, though. At least one person stood for him. The host quickly paired them up for the next stage, a dinner date. But instead of the show's typical fancy setup with champagne and candlelight, Chuka made a request that surprised everyone. When asked where he wanted to take Amara, he smiled faintly and said, let's go somewhere simple. Somewhere real. The producers hesitated. The show was built on glamour, on expensive scenes, on the illusion of fairy tale romance. But eventually, they gave in. That night, after the cameras dimmed and the studio emptied, Chuka led Amara out of the glittering environment and into the real Lagos night. The streets buzzed with Danfo buses honking, okadas weaving through traffic, and vendors shouting, suya. Hot suya. He took her to a roadside suya spot in Suralere. The air was smoky, rich with the smell of peppered meat roasting over open flames. People sat on plastic chairs under dim bulbs, tearing into spicy beef with their bare hands, sipping cold malt and laughing with friends. It was noisy, crowded, ordinary. But for Chuka, it was perfect. Amara looked around, surprised. I thought you'd take me to one of those fancy restaurants they always show on TV. Chuka chuckled. Why? So we can pretend. This is the real Lagos. This is the kind of place I enjoy. They sat on 2 plastic chairs, shared a plate of suya wrapped in newspaper, and laughed as the pepper burned their tongues. Amara coughed at one point, fanning her mouth, and Chuka quickly passed her a bottle of cold water. She laughed between gulps. So you brought me here to test my tolerance for pepper? He smiled. Maybe. Or maybe I brought you here to see if you can enjoy the simple things. For the first time in years, Chuka felt free. No one in that suya joint knew him as a billionaire. No one stared at him like a prize. With Amara, he was just a man in a faded shirt, eating suya with a beautiful woman who saw him as more than his clothes. They talked for hours. Amara shared stories about her students, the stubborn ones, the brilliant ones, and the hilarious ones who always had excuses for missing homework. Chuka laughed until his eyes watered. He told her about his own university days, when he lived in a cramped hostel and survived on gari and groundnut. Amara listened intently, not once asking what he did for a living, not once probing about money. She was more interested in his stories, his humor, his honesty. As the night deepened, Chuka looked at her across the table, illuminated by the dim yellow bulb. He thought to himself, for the first time in years, I feel seen. Not as a billionaire. Not as a prize. Just as a man. Amara smiled at him, wiping pepper from her lips with tissue. I don't know what it is about you, she said softly, but I feel comfortable. Like I can be myself. Chuka's heart stirred. No gold-digging questions. No fake laughter. Just honesty. Just simplicity. In that moment, something inside him shifted. Perhaps, his journey into humiliation was not a curse, it was the beginning of something real. And so, under the smoky night sky of Lagos, with pepper burning their tongues and laughter easing their hearts, the billionaire who hid his riches and the teacher who chose to see beyond appearances began a story neither of them expected. Weeks passed after that first suya date, and something unexpected began to blossom between Chuka and Amara. Their connection was unplanned, unpolished, and deeply human. They started meeting regularly, sometimes after Amara closed from her teaching job, other times during the weekends. Chuka kept everything simple, insisting they meet in places where the noise of wealth couldn't drown out real conversation. They would sit in local parks, sipping pure water from sachets, laughing at children chasing kites. They would eat jollof rice from street vendors, sharing one plastic spoon. On rainy evenings, they sheltered under shop canopies, talking about life and dreams while the rain pounded heavily against the zinc roofs. Chuka found himself telling her stories he had never told anyone, not even his closest friends. He told her about how lonely it felt to grow up in a mansion with bodyguards instead of playmates, how much he missed his late mother's warmth, and how he envied ordinary families who sat together at dinner tables filled with noise and laughter. Amara, in turn, told him about her struggles. She spoke of overcrowded classrooms, unpaid salaries, and nights when she marked scripts by candlelight because of power outages. She laughed as she confessed that she sometimes ate only bread and akra when her salary delayed. Yet, she spoke with pride about her students, how she believed in their potential, how she dreamed of one day building a small academy in Enugu where children could learn freely. Not once did she ask Chuka what he did for a living. Not once did she press him about money. When he offered to pay for her taxi rides home, she often refused. No, she said with a smile. I can handle it. I don't want you to think I'm here for that. For Chuka, it was both refreshing and terrifying. She was everything he had prayed for, authentic, kind, and uninterested in wealth. But the secret loomed larger each day. He knew he couldn't keep lying about his identity forever. The turning point came one sunny Saturday when Chuka invited Amara for a road trip. He picked her up in an old Toyota Corolla, one of his cars from years back, deliberately chosen to maintain his disguise. Amara entered with a smile, carrying a small handbag and a bottle of Zobo she had bought on the way. Where are we going? She asked playfully. You'll see, he replied with a grin. They drove out of Lagos, chatting and singing along to old Nigerian songs playing from the car stereo. Amara laughed loudly when Chuka struggled with the lyrics of a classic highlife song. For hours, they drove through winding roads, passing busy markets and quiet villages. The journey felt endless but peaceful. Then, suddenly, Chuka switched routes. Instead of heading towards a small beach resort Amara assumed they were visiting, he turned the car toward Lekki and drove through heavily guarded gates. Amara frowned. Chuka, where are we going? This doesn't look like a public place. He said nothing. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. His heart raced. They drove into a massive estate lined with palm trees and luxurious mansions. Security guards at the gates saluted as the car passed. Workers on the roadside paused and bowed. Amara's confusion deepened. When the car stopped in front of one of the largest mansions she had ever seen, Amara's breath caught in her throat. The house was enormous, stretching like a palace. Tall pillars supported a wide balcony, glass windows reflected the afternoon sun, and manicured gardens stretched on either side. A fountain sprayed water into the air, sparkling like diamonds. Before she could speak, workers rushed out. Welcome, sir, they chorused, bowing slightly. Some carried bags, others opened the car doors. They all recognized Chuka instantly, though he had not been here in weeks. Amara froze, gripping her handbag tightly. Slowly, she turned to look at him. Her voice trembled. Chuka, what is going on? He stepped out of the car, sighed deeply, and finally faced her. Amara. I am not who you think I am. She got out slowly, still staring at the mansion in disbelief. Then who are you? I am Chuka Okafor, he said, his voice heavy. CEO of Okafor Holdings. This house, this estate, this company, it's mine. The man you've been seeing is a disguise. I came on that show not as myself, but as an ordinary man searching for something real. And you were the only one who saw me. For a long moment, silence fell between them. Amara's heart pounded. Her mind swirled with emotions, shock, betrayal, confusion, even anger. She took a step back, her voice breaking. So, you've been testing me? All this time? Everything we shared, every moment, was it just a game to you? Chuka's chest tightened. He moved closer, his eyes pleading. No, Amara. It wasn't a game. I had to know. I had to see if someone could love me without knowing about the billions, without caring about the cars or the power. And you proved that it's possible. Amara shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. But you lied to me, Chuka. You let me believe you were struggling, that you were just like me. Do you know how humiliating it feels to realize I've been living in a story, while you knew the ending all along? I didn't mean to hurt you, he said softly. I was only afraid. Afraid that if I told you the truth, everything would change. Afraid you'd look at me the way all the others did. Afraid of losing the only genuine connection I've had in years. Amara's hands trembled. She looked at the workers bowing, the grand mansion towering over her, the opulence that screamed of a world she never belonged to. This is too much. You should have trusted me. You should have told me. Her voice cracked, heavy with pain. Because now, I don't know if I can trust you at all. Chuka's heart sank. For the first time since meeting her, he felt powerless. All the wealth around him, the mansion, the cars, it meant nothing. What mattered was the woman standing before him, her trust slipping through his fingers. Amara, please, he whispered. I may be a billionaire, but with you, I've been nothing but myself. The man who ate suya with you, who laughed at your stories, who listened to your dreams, that's still me. Nothing has changed. But to Amara, everything had changed. She stood frozen, torn between the memory of the simple man she had grown to care for, and the reality of the powerful billionaire who had kept his true identity hidden. The weight of betrayal pressed down on her chest as she whispered the words that cut deeper than rejection. I need time, Chuka. I need to think. She turned away, walking slowly toward the gates, leaving him standing in front of his mansion, surrounded by wealth, yet more alone than ever. For days after the shocking revelation, Amara's mind was a battlefield. She tossed and turned at night, unable to sleep. Her heart told her Chuka was the same man she had laughed with over suya, the same man who listened to her stories with genuine interest. But her mind screamed that he had deceived her, that everything she thought she knew about him was built on a lie. She had grown up believing honesty was the foundation of love, and now that foundation had been shaken. Meanwhile, the entire country buzzed with the story. Blogs splashed headlines across the internet. Balloon of Love contestant revealed as billionaire heir. The man every woman rejected is actually Nigeria's youngest construction tycoon. Clips from the show went viral. Millions rewatched the moment every balloon popped, followed by Amara's lone decision to keep hers. Memes flooded Twitter and Instagram. Suddenly, Amara found herself in the center of attention. People called her lucky, others accused her of being clever, and some even said she had, strategically, kept her balloon because she suspected something. But what hurt her most was the whispers in her own community. Some neighbors sneered, she has hit jackpot oh. Others teased, teacher Amara has retired from chalk and lesson notes. She felt suffocated by expectations she never asked for. At the mansion, Chuka sat by the balcony each night, staring at the city lights of Lagos, waiting for Amara's call. He ignored the flood of messages from the other contestants. One by one, they tried to worm their way back into his life. Adiz, the boldest, arrived at the estate gate wearing designer clothes and carrying an expensive handbag. She told the guards, "Tell him I made a mistake. I was nervous on the show. I didn't mean to pop my balloon." But Chuka refused to see her. Another, Kemi, sent long voice notes crying, "Please, Chuka, forgive me. I only popped the balloon because the lights were too bright. I actually liked you." He deleted the messages without listening to the end. By the third day, the desperation became comical. Some of the women even staged paparazzi photos, posting online with captions like, "If only we knew who he was, we would have chosen differently." Nigerians mocked them mercilessly in the comments. But despite rejecting them all, Chuka was restless. His heart wanted only Amara, yet he couldn't be sure she would forgive him. Amara, on her part, decided to avoid social media. Instead, she returned to her classroom in Enugu, teaching her little students who didn't care whether she dated a billionaire or a poor man. The innocence of the children reminded her of what truly mattered. Still, every time she dismissed class, her thoughts drifted back to the night at the suya joint, when Chuka smiled shyly as pepper sauce dripped on his chin. That was the man she cared for, not the CEO in tailored suits. One evening, as she sat alone on her narrow bed, tears rolling down her cheeks, she whispered to herself, "If I walk away now, I may lose something real. But if I stay, can I trust him again?" Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Chuka. "Amara, I won't pressure you. I just want you to know, the man you met, the man who sat by the roadside with you, is the truest version of me. The money is just noise. Please, don't let the noise steal what we found." Amara closed her eyes, clutching the phone to her chest. She knew what she had to do. The next day, she boarded a bus to Lagos. The journey was long, but her heart was steady. When she arrived at the gates of Chuka's estate, the guards recognized her immediately. "Madam, welcome. Oga has been expecting you," one of them said with a knowing smile. Inside, Chuka was seated in the garden, lost in thought. When Amara walked in, he rose quickly, his eyes wide with hope. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Amara spoke, her voice trembling but firm. "Yes, you tested me, and it hurt. But I realized something, Chuka. The man I ate suya with, the man I laughed with, is the same man standing here now. I choose you, Chuka. Not your money. You." Chuka's eyes welled with tears. He took her hands gently, as though afraid she might disappear. "Amara, you've given me the greatest gift, love without price." They embraced, holding each other tightly as though the world outside didn't exist. Soon, the story of their reunion spread across Nigeria. Unlike the gold diggers who tried to rewrite history, Amara's choice shone brighter. She became a symbol of true love, of looking beyond appearances. Interviews poured in, but she declined most of them, preferring to live quietly beside Chuka. Weeks later, Chuka organized a small dinner, not a grand show, and there, under the glow of lanterns in his garden, he asked Amara to be his wife. She said yes. Their love story wasn't celebrated because of his billions, but because one woman, with a simple balloon in her hand, chose to see a man for who he was. If you like this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching and catch you in the next video.